Well, people don't talk a lot about the Phrygians today. Phrygia was a kingdom that occupied roughly 1/3 the size of modern-day Turkey in the first millennium BC. So from 900 BC to the arrival of Alexander the Great in the late 4th century BC. During this period, Phrygia probably stretched from the Sea of Marmara to the Euphrates River. So it was enormous, and Gordion was the capital.
Merhaba, Hafir programında bugün Hafir adının kullanıldığı kazılardan bir tanesindeyiz. İç Anadolu'da, Polatlı'da, Gordion'dayız ki 1950'li yıllardan bu yana süren Amerikalıların yaptığı bir kazı. Gordion, Frigya'nın da başkenti aynı zamanda oldukça etkileyici bir kent. Hani o efsanelere konu olmuş eşek kulaklı, altın dokunuşlu Kral Midas'ın kenti ve burada neredeyse yarım asıra süren bir zamandır Türkiye'de çalışan arkeolog Profesör Doktor Brian Rose ile bu muhteşem kenti gezeceğiz.
I'm a professor of Mediterranean archaeology at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm also curator in charge of the Mediterranean section of the Penn Museum, and I'm director of the Gordion Project. Well, I've had a long career in Turkey, although I started out excavating in Italy. When I was 17 years old, I was looking for a way to get out of the United States, to experience the wonders of the world. And the easiest way at that age was to become an American Field Service exchange student. And that summer, they sent me as an exchange student to Italy and put me on an excavation. So I started digging in Italy when I was 17 years old, and I've continued ever since. And when I got to graduate school, which was Columbia in New York, I began excavating at Aphrodisias in southwest Turkey. I excavated there for 5 years, and at the end of that, I finished my PhD. I got a job at teaching at the University of Cincinnati. Cincinnati had excavated Troy between 1932 and 1938, and they wanted to start the project again with Manfred Korfmann of the University of Tübingen. So Manfred and I formed a partnership while I was at Cincinnati, and we worked at Troy for 25 years. And then I left Cincinnati, got a job at the University of Pennsylvania, where they had been excavating at Gordion since 1950. And the director was retiring. They asked me to take over Gordion. So I've been here for the last 15 years. Altogether, it's 43 years in Turkey.
You talked about discoveries that you have to bring to your sponsors. How was this year? Was it fruitful?
Yes, this was a terrific year. We're standing in the South Gate area. I started excavating here in 2013 because I was hoping to determine whether or not there was a road that cut through the center of the Citadel Mound on which we're now standing. What I found was a complete surprise, a major gateway leading into the Citadel that was in use for 1,200 years, or even more than that.
Continuously?
Continuously 1,200 years. And we found the long approach road that came east-west, This summer, we found the north-south approach road leading to the gatehouse, which is right behind me. We found this only a few days ago. So this is a major discovery relating to the city plan of Gordion between the 9th century BC and the 4th century AD.
While I was here talking to some of the workers, they said there was a missing part over here.
Yes.
Is that a missing part? What is that? I couldn't understand.
What is truly frustrating about being an archaeologist are the definigilaire, the treasure hunters. And sometimes those are not the people who just come into the trench and steal objects. And that is the case here. These walls were standing intact for nearly 3,000 years. And then in the late 19th century, when they were building, German engineers were building the Berlin-Baghdad Railroad in this area, they realized there was an ancient settlement here. They came and dug here, took the stones to build the railroad bridges for the Berlin-Baghdad Railroad. And so the buildings were disrupted and the blocks stolen only 100 years ago.
So they recycled them, destroying an early Phrygian wall.
That's exactly right. They are recycled stones. So therefore, when we dig here, we find the big pit that the German engineers left for us when they took the stones for the railroad bridges.
Oh, that's quite interesting. So that's quite near archaeology.
Yes, it's too new.
Too new, yes.
I think my favorite discovery was at Troy. We were excavating a sanctuary of a fertility goddess, Matar or Kibele, and we found the bones of lions that were part of a skin that the priests were wearing during one of the religious services in honor of the goddess. So finding these lion bones, knowing they were part of a cloak or a piece of clothing, and being able to get a sense of the religious activity that occurred there 2,600 years ago, that was a wonderful discovery. I have to find my own sponsors in running an excavation. In America, we don't have a Ministry of Culture and Tourism. We have nothing even close to that. That's one of the wonderful things about Turkey. That does exist here. But I have to find my own money. So during the year, I put together a newsletter. I send it out to as many people as I can. I go from person to person, from foundation to foundation, from city to city, during the year, from September to May, and I ask people to become partners in this project, explaining that we are unveiling some of the great mysteries of ancient civilizations, and they can be a stakeholder, a participant in that process. And I have to do that every year. Well, we excavate in order to educate the public about the ancient world. And so we try to publish as fast as we can. This was one of the best things we did at Troy. We founded a new journal called Studia Troica, which was published every year. And so we were forced to bring all of our discoveries together in articles every single year. And this is important because in archaeology, there aren't a lot of people who publish quickly. You always say to yourself, well, I won't publish this year because I don't understand the answers to all the questions. I'll publish next year. And then the next year in the trenches, you find the corner of a building and you think, here's another question. I'll just wait until I have the answer to that question, then I will publish. If that's what you do, you never publish because there's always a question around every corner. So I try to publish every year, bring all of the information together every year, because otherwise you lose control of the data and you never get back to it. We have architects, surveyors, people who do remote sensing, geophysics, people who do archaeobotanical analysis, animal bone analysis, human skeletal, analysis, people who use techniques like an XRF to determine what metals appear in a particular object. We have conservators, photographers, trench supervisors. It's very much like a corporation with a lot of different departments, and the excavation director every day tries to go to each department and bring all of the information together. We're, as I said, international, so 51% of the staff is Turkish. We have American participants, Italian, German, Dutch. It's like a miniature United Nations. Well, people don't talk a lot about the Phrygians today. Phrygia was a kingdom that occupied roughly 1/3 the size of modern-day Turkey in the first millennium BC. So from 900 BC to the arrival of Alexander the Great in the late 4th century BC. During this period, Phrygia probably stretched from the Sea of Marmara to the Euphrates River. So it was enormous, and Gordion was the capital. And people now talk about, I suppose, two things. The fact that our most famous king was Midas, who reportedly had a golden touch, and Alexander the Great came to the site in 333 and cut the Gordian knot, giving rise to the expression, cutting the Gordian knot, finding a fast and effective solution to a difficult problem. Gordion and Phrygia were also very much a combination of East and West. So they looked west toward Western Asia Minor and toward Greece, and east toward the kingdoms of Urartu in what is now northeastern Turkey, the city-states in southeastern Turkey like Karkemish, and also Assyria, and points further to the south in Syria. So it was very much a meeting point of East and West. And you see that in the archaeology. A civilization that sometimes looked more to the west, sometimes more to the east, but chose to identify itself exclusively as neither one. It was a mix of East and West. We've never found the tomb of King Midas. It's something that archaeologists of the future will have to discover because we're not sure where it is. This is called the Midas Mound because Midas built it for his father, Gordius, about 740 BC. What we've done to date it is to use tree ring dating or dendrochronology. That gives us a date of about 740. That was the beginning of Midas's reign. So it's probably a burial mound that he built for his father Gordius right at the beginning of his reign. And when he built it, it was the largest burial mound in all of Asia Minor, and it is still the second largest burial mound in Turkey. The only one taller is in Sardis.
Brian Hoca'nın dediği gibi burada multidisipliner, yani çok kollu, çok disiplinli bir kazı yürütülüyor. Şimdi biz kazı evinin deposundayız ve burada birçok kazıda belki göremeyeceğiniz daha nadir olarak bulunan bir uzmanlık çalışması var. Osteoarkeolog dediğimiz arkeoloji eğitimi üzerine adli tıp eğitimi de alarak kentte bulunan iskeletlerin ve kafa taslarını yüzlendirmesini yaparak nasıl bir yüzü olduğunu anlamaya çalışıyorlar. Gerrit Bey de Tuğba Hanım'la beraber bu konuda çalışıyorlar. Ne yapıyorsunuz, kısaca bir anlatabilir misiniz?
Bu iskelet bir mezarlıktan çıktı, Höyük dibinde. O mezarlık Antik Anadolu'da Helenistik dönemde başladı. Büyük İskender hemen sonra. O zaman da burada bir Makedonya koloni var. Yani 60-80 yıl sonra Keltler burada yaşadı, geldi. Yani savaş yaptılar. Bu toprak aldı. Galatlar Avrupa'dan geldi, Makedonyalar gibi. Bu grup burada Tolista Bogi, onun ismi. Ve bu mezarlık, bazı mezar Makedonya döneminde herhalde, bazen Galat
Galat
döneminden.
döneminden.
O zaman yaklaşık 300'den 200'e milletin öncede.
Tarihliyorsunuz.
He.
Ve bu şeyleri özellikle yüzleri etlendirerek tekrar yüzlendirerek erkek ve kadın örneklerinin tiplerini de görüyorsunuz.
Tuğba Hanım çok iyi biliyor. O bize dedi bu bir kadın. Yani orta yaş gibi. O bir çukurdan çıktı. O çukurda birkaç kişi var. Onun vücut üstünde taşlar var ve onlar üstünde başka bir daha genç bir kadın var. Ve bebekler. Herhalde bunlar Galat dönemden. Çünkü onun göm ritüel farklı, çok
Galatların farklı.
Ha. Mesela Orta Batı Anadolu'da Tunç Çağ'dan sonra farklı göm ritüel oldu.
Evet.
Anlatabilir miyim?
Evet, evet. Peki, kolay gelsin size. Teşekkür ederiz.
Biz teşekkür ederiz.
The most important activities in which we're engaged relate to conservation. That would involve object conservation, the rather small objects that we find during the daily excavation, and also the large buildings, architectural conservation. For us, the most important work is architectural conservation because the buildings on the Citadel Mound were damaged in a major fire in 800 BC, and the blocks were badly burned. They were subsequently covered in antiquity, but excavated again in the 1950s and 1960s. In earlier days, archaeologists would excavate buildings, and then they wouldn't conserve them. They were looking for publicity. They wanted to be on television. And no one gets on television if they're focused on conservation of the objects that they find. They get to be on television if there are new discoveries. So that means we have to do the conservation of the buildings that they found, as well as the conservation of the buildings that we found. In most of those buildings, we have a variety of materials: wall painting, bronzes, architectural terracottas, glass, coins, almost anything that you would use in daily life, we find. And that requires an enormous amount of object conservation. So we spend a full 3 months focused on this object conservation, trying to bring them back to a stable state so that we can put them on display in a museum and everyone in the public can enjoy them.
Gordion is a magnificent site. We all know this, and we're standing at one of the most impressive remains of the city. What is this place?
This is the East Citadel Gate of Gordion, first built in 850 BC. So it's nearly 3,000 years old, and it's the best preserved Iron Age citadel gate that has ever been found. By Iron Age, I mean early first millennium BC. And it still stands, as you see, to a height of 10 meters. And you have to imagine another 6 meters of mud brick structure on top of that. So the whole thing was probably 16 meters high. Would have made a phenomenal impression on anyone who came to the city, especially the diplomats, who didn't have fortifications quite this monumental.
This is quite discouraging for the diplomats who maybe have in mind, maybe we can capture Gordion one day, but seeing this is quite discouraging, I think.
Well, I think they will have decided that they should establish diplomatic relations with Gordion rather than attack it.
Attack it. How does Gordion come to an end?
Gordion comes to an end finally in the 12th to 14th century. In the Middle Ages, there is a village here. It seems to be a mixture of Seljuk and Byzantine. And at about 1400, the activity here stops. One of the problems is that the river, which was the main water source here, the Sakarya River, was in the process of moving from the east side of the mound to the west side of the mound. So it was unstable and no longer a reliable water source.
Are there any plans for Gordion?
Well, our biggest plan at the moment is to become a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Our hope is that we will be the 20th Turkish site to be inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage Site list. This will be voted on next month in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, the 17th, 18th, or 19th of September. We are expecting this to go well, and after that, we can put a UNESCO sign at the entrance to the site. This will bring no additional money from UNESCO, but if you become a UNESCO site, you attract many more visitors, many more tourists than you would have if there had been no UNESCO designation. So becoming a UNESCO site means more tourists. It means the economy rises because the visitors are coming here and spending more money. So the site becomes a much more important part of the local economy, and then everyone works to protect it.
Excavating, conserving, restoring, finding academic data is one thing, but to keep this work going, I understand you need to have visitors and sponsors and this kind of public relations too.
And we need to make the village value the site and the ancient Phrygian monuments with as much passion as we have for these monuments so that they will protect it just as strongly as we do.
Well, Brian, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
It's
Wonderful.
been a great pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful to talk to you.
Hope that Gordion will be a UNESCO World Heritage Site after September.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.